Right. So, great question. Why is it that we see so many quality initiatives, so many quality management systems, so many quality programs currently in industry feel more like a burden than they are an asset to an organization? So, why do we have managers and executives and boards tending to want to shovel it off to other people to look after rather than take on being responsible for it in the true sense of responsibility itself? Themselves. So it's a great question. There are multiple elements to this, I believe. And so there are multiple answers. And I'll summarize it by saying this: the ineffectiveness of quality management systems is due to an anti-systemic application. Now we'll have to explode that a little bit and just understand what that means, so we can understand what it means to systemize it properly, approach it from a systemic thinking point of view, and then ultimately build a quality management system. So the first question I'll generally ask when I walk into an organization is, well, what is quality? I want to understand what it means to them, the organization. And the answers that I'll get back quite often is that it's all about systems and processes, which makes sense. The next thing I'll hear is that it's about documenting our systems and processes so that we can perform the systems and processes more reliably without variation. The next thing I'll hear a bit about is customer satisfaction. And then I'll hear something along the lines of it's all about delivering the promise. We say what we're going to do, and then we do what we then we do what we say we're going to do. So they're the general kinds of answers that I get back. And then I usually lead into the next question, which is, where is quality found? Where do you see it? Where do you find it? And this is the question that starts to bring the clarity around what quality actually is. Because when we're talking about quality, it's important to acknowledge that these elements here in their own right are correct, but we need to understand that they are properties, they're characteristics of quality, they're not what quality actually is. And in order to defend that argument, we need to explore the next question: where is quality found? And the easiest way to describe in a facilitation sense where quality is found is to go to a simple analogy where, let's just say we decide to go out for dinner and we're going to go to we're going to go to a pizza restaurant. All right. Now, these pizzas are pretty big. So what we're going to do is we're going to order a pizza. It's going to be pretty big. We're going to take that pizza. We're only going to order one. Then we're going to split it in half. And when we do, we're going to end up with two halves of a pizza, and that'll be it. So I'll eat this one and you eat that half, and c'est la vie. What the restaurant then does is they turn around, and the restaurant will ultimately say, hey, we're willing to shout this pizza for you if you would do us a kind favor. What we're looking for is for you to give us a quality rating out of 100 for the pizza. Now, interestingly enough, don't mind a free pizza, so I'm willing to take the deal, and I'd be willing to guess that you'd be willing to take the deal as well. And so we do. And what happens is, we eat our pizza, and then we sit down to give it a rating of quality out of 100. Now, this pizza is made by the same person, the same way, with the same tools, the same ingredients, at the same time. It came as one pizza. All we did was cut it in half. So the variability in the manufacturing and the production of this pizza is removed in this situation. And then the question becomes, well, if we're going to give it an individual rating out of 100 each, what are the chances of us giving the quality of this pizza the exact same rating? And quite often when I ask that question, then we arrive at an answer that goes along the lines of not very likely. So I might give it a 65 out of 100, and you might give it a 92 out of 100. All right, I don't like the thickness of the base. It's too thick for me, too much dough. It becomes too chewy for me. You might like that. It it adds a little bit more substance to the ingredients, the sting on top. You like more cheese, I like less cheese. I like less meat, you like more meat, etc., etc. And so now when we start to going, okay, well, where is quality found? We've got the same production process, the same procedures, the same documents, if there is a document describing how to cook this pizza. All of that is in line, but we've got a variation in the rating of the quality. And that becomes the answer as to where quality is found, and therefore what quality is, because quality is not what you find in your business. It is an experience of the customer that is outside of your business, right? So when we're talking about what quality is and what we tend to focus on when we're talking about quality, systems and processes, document, how we create customer satisfaction, and how, making sure we deliver the promise. This is all about I, me. When quality is actually all about outside. So this is internal and this is external. And so now we start to see the divide, the void that happens when we're talking about quality, because what we're focusing is on one thing when actually it's another. So how do we get around this? Well, it's important to realize that in business, we're here to create experiences. This is a rating of the experience of the pizza. So the first thing we've got to understand is what's the experience that we need to create. Once we're clear with the experience, then we can develop and build a system in order to facilitate that experience. That system will tell us what resources we're going to require, and those resources tell us how to manage our people, how we develop our leadership, how we manage our processes, how we manage the governance of the organization through our executive teams and our board levels. And so what we can start to do is, all right, well, now we can start to identify an experience. Then we've got the system to deliver it. That tells us our resources. Then we've got the people. The experience is actually what sits outside of the organization, and the rest of it sits on the inside of the organization. And so now that we can start to identify the experience that we need to create, and in order to be able to get those quality ratings to come closer together, what we can start to do is understand the experience, right? So how do we start to understand the experience? Well, categorically is the easiest way to approach it. There's many ways to do this, but what we find is a categoric approach is the easiest way to approach it. The first thing we've got to realize is that people, that the thing that starts to form the experience from the start is that people will have requirements. Now, when they're approaching a pizza shop, what are their requirements? I'm going to require a table and chair to sit at. I require a drink to have with my pizza. I require the pizza to be cooked properly, not raw. I require fresh ingredients in order to have this great experience. And that all comes from a higher think sort of style, where we're using logic, we're using data, we're using past experiences and what we've executively come across in the past. We're using standards, we're using our knowledge of the standard of what a pizza should be, in order to executively understand our requirements. The next thing we've got to do is go, all right, well, now we've got our set of requirements, we can start to see a set of expectations. Expectations are an evolution of our requirements, but requirements don't generally have a whole lot of emotion attached to them. Expectations are more requirements that have emotions attached to them. And so I would expect that the pizza is cooked to perfection. I would expect that the meat is not undercooked because that's unhealthy. I would expect that there's a healthy amount of ingredients and pizza toppings on there because that's what makes a nice pizza. I would expect that the restaurant facility is clean and tidy because I want to feel like I'm in a clean and tidy environment so I can enjoy my pizza. And so what we start to do is highlight and come across a set of expectations. It's more requirements that have emotional charge to them. And the next thing we start to do is go, all right, well, now we can go, With our expectations, we then have needs. Needs are a little more harder, a little more difficult to talk about, put language around. They often come from what we call like a gut feeling. Notice how a gut feeling, we kind of know it's there, but it's difficult to talk about. And often with experiences, needs often appear as an anchor to the past. So usually it'll come across as something like, my nonna, grandmother, she is traditional Italian pizza. She loves a traditional Italian pizza. And if there's anything else that's served up that's not traditional Italian pizza, then that's actually going to be going against my family heritage. And I don't appreciate having a product presented to me that goes against my traditional heritage. And so we can start to identify, at a base foundation level, what needs there are. This can also be something like, I've got a basic need right now in this instance of food because I'm hungry and I need a cure for hungry. And so, the needs start to appear as a feeling of hunger, and we need to be able to satisfy that. The last thing is probably not the most obvious thing, but this is all about outcomes. So outcomes are a comparison, usually of what you had at the start versus what you have at the end. Now, is what you were told at the start lining up with what you got at the end? If so, that's going to create a good experience. If not, then that's going to be the foundation of what might be a not so good experience. The next thing that we've got to examine here is where my requirements met, where my expectations met, and where my needs met. And so what we can start to, it's a bit of a summary. What we can start to see is that now that we have our requirements, our expectations, our needs, and our outcomes, it's what we call doing a reno on our experience and our clients, our customers, our markets. And so by doing a reno, we're essentially going to take the architecture of what a reno is, we're going to break it down, reform it and redesign it, rebuild it, and create the experience that drives our business forward. So this becomes our experience. Now, where does experience sort of appear? Well, we can start to come back up here. Now we've got this experience infrastructure now starting to form, where now it's moving above and beyond our strategy, our culture, our overall context. This is the very reason why this is an anti-systemic application as well, because without that overarching context, we've got elements that don't quite line up and don't quite get the result, which is why it feels like a burden. The quality system feels like a burden. And the fact that they don't all quite line up and quite get the result that they're intended to achieve means that they're anti-systemic in nature. And that's why it's an anti-systemic application. But now that we're starting to get infrastructure around the experience, we can understand what kind of a system we've got to build, which allows us to understand what resources we've got to have in place: time, money, focus, energy, creativity, power, technology, assets, as in physical assets, as well as non-tangible assets. And with our resources in place, then we can understand what we have to do as far as people is concerned, how we have to lead and manage our people and our processes, and what kind of governance our top layers and levels of management have to put in place in order to make sure we can reliably deliver this experience over and over again. So that's a quick breakdown of what quality is and why quality is an anti-systemic application in most cases. I believe most organizations don't really do this properly, but if we can start to embrace what it means to do quality well by following this kind of process, then I think we'll start to see the evolution of quality appear and hopefully build better future businesses.